It is no secret that status is something men seek and women desire men with status. And is it actually true that women, generally speaking, put a higher import on status in a potential mate of the opposite sex than men do? And how can you increase your status externally but also work on it internally? The latter, which by now you should know, has my preference. Let's cover the first question. Is it actually true that women, generally speaking, put a higher import on status than men do? Women have evolved specific preferences for men who have resources to offer. We covered a fair bit of this in the previous videos in this attraction series. That if an ancestral woman had to choose between two men, one that shows great generosity to her with his resources and the other whom is stingy, all else being equal, the generous man would be more valuable because he'd be more likely to share food, to sacrifice his time, energy and resources for the benefit of the children and thus aiding the woman's reproductive success. We covered the parental investment theory that predicts two things. First, the sex that invests more in its offspring will be more selective when choosing a mate, and second, the less investing sex will have intrasexual competition for access to mates. Whether you look at it from the initial investment per gamete, the fertilization, gestation and breastfeeding period, there is no denying. Sex investment for women is much higher than for men. David Buss, in his highly scientifically backed book Evolutionary Psychology, writes, "Women desire men who command a high position because social status is a universal cue to the control of resources." He explains that along with status comes better food, more abundant territory, and superior healthcare. In other words, a higher social status bestows on children social opportunities missed by the children of lower-ranking males. But you might wonder, is it actually true that women, generally speaking, put a higher import on status than men do? Friends, there is this international study done in which participants in 37 cultures rated the variable preference for social status in a marriage partner in the context of 18 other variables on how desirable it would be in a potential long-term mate or marriage partner using a 4-point rating scale ranging from 0, meaning irrelevant or unimportant, to 3, meaning indispensable. The author of the study mentions that the importance that women grant to social status in mates is not limited to the United States or even to capitalistic countries. In the vast majority of the 37 cultures considered in the international study on choosing a mate, women valued social status in a prospective mate more than men. This was regardless of whether it was a communist or socialist country. In Brazil, women valued status 40% more. In West Germany, women valued status 38% more. And in Taiwan, women valued status 63% more than men did. Another more recent study is done with Tinder. In their study, 3,600 real Tinder users in Ghent, Leuven and Bruges, which are 3 cities in Belgium, received a right swipe by 24 fictitious profiles created by the authors of the study. Friends, these fictitious profiles differed only in their education level, which was randomly assigned to the profiles. And here's the interesting part. It has been found that women on Tinder indicated interest in fictitious profiles with a master's degree, brace yourself guys, 91.4% more often compared to fictitious profile with a bachelor's degree. Almost twice as much. Contrarily, men on Tinder indicated interest in fictitious profile with a master's degree only 8.2% more often compared to fictitious profiles with a bachelor's degree. I'd be remiss not to mention that there is an alternative explanation for why women prefer men with resources. I didn't know this one existed, but came across it through reading the aforementioned book. It is called The Structural Powerlessness, also known as Sexual Socialization or Gender Economic Inequality Hypothesis. The gist is as follows. Because women are typically excluded from power and access to resources, women seek mates who have power, status, and earning capacity. So women try to marry upward in socioeconomic status so they can gain access to resources. We live in a world where in many fields women start dominating the educational system and therefore have more potential to out-earn and certainly outrank men in socioeconomic status, which has many benefits and ramifications for society as a whole. Contrary to the aforementioned sexual hypothesis, which I by the way do not buy into. In a study, successful women expressed an even stronger preference for high-earning men than did women who are less financially successful. So there you have that. But I'll cover that more in depth in another video, perhaps the alpha female video. Now, before I explain to you how you can increase your status, I want you to know that there is a book on which I've created a video summary, The Status Game. In that book, the nature of status is explored thoroughly, so be sure to subscribe to watch that video and learn more about status through a closer look in its ever-changing form from an evolutionary perspective. So, how can you increase your status? It is well known that men high in status and resources are more likely to marry. Also, their selection pool of women is bigger than those who have lower status, due to the fact that men who have that which most women want, such as status, power and resources, are better able to successfully attract women that men prefer most. It is not too difficult to imagine why people fake being high status. I'll cover some of the easiest way men typically do this and also how women fake their status in a second. Several studies show that physically attractive women do indeed tend to marry men with higher incomes and occupational status. And as mentioned in the previous video, most men place a premium on youth and beauty in a mate, whether consciously or subconsciously, but not all men succeed in achieving their desires. When you lack status, your selection pool is limited, and you may have to settle for less than your ideal woman. In studies of deception tactics, men are more likely than women to inflate their status, prestige, and income to potential mates. It's also been shown that men experience the emotion of envy more than women in response to mating rivals who have higher status and greater financial resources. The brutal truth regarding limited pool for mate selection is also true for women. But instead of being low status, which as we saw before is less important to men, women who are less attractive, physically speaking, also have a more limited selection pool of potential mates. What I'm going to mention next is the more external parts on how to increase your perceived status.